Hi, this is Miss Goodale, and today I'm going to be talking about finding the whole number using percent. You should have some notes on this, and in my notes I describe using 3 different methods. One of them is just using the percent by simplifying and multiplying and using cross multiplication and division. So basically, the first thing that we do is we're going to find a way to set it up as a ratio or proportion and then solve from there the missing number. So I would use this for a problem that might say 5 is 10% of, and then you would have a blank or a missing number. The first way, just using a percent, would just be, or using equivalent ratios, sorry. Using equivalent ratios would just be to set it up as 5 over, and we don't know, right? 5 out of, we don't know what it's 10% of, so we put the question mark underneath. 10%, a percent is always out of 100, so it's 10 out of 100. And then we would go from there, and I would pretty much set up most of my problems this way. If I'm going to do it this way, then I could say, okay, how do I get, what do I multiply by 5 to get to 10? And I would do the same thing with this number to get to 100. So 5 times 2 equals 10. That means I multiplied times my other number times 2 to get 100. Well, what times 2 is 100? That would be 50. So my answer on that one would be 50. So 5 out of 50 is 10 over 100, or 5 is 10% of, and then I could just put my 50 in here. Now I could do this kind of the same way with using cross multiplication. So I could set it up like this. Oops. We'll start out with the same problem, and we should get the same answer. So I would still do 5 over a question mark equals 10 out of 100. Remember, with cross multiplication, you multiply these numbers across. So you would do 5 times 100, which equals 500. And then you divide that answer by your other number. So 500 divided by 10, which equals 50. So I still get the same answer, regardless of whether I've used equivalent ratios or cross multiplication. Okay, those are 2 ways. The third way, and this one, if you look at your notes, equivalent ratios is the first one listed on your notes, and cross multiplication is actually on the back of your notes, so it's the last one listed. The third one is by simplifying and multiplying. So I'm going to use the same example. And so again, I'm going to start out with it the same way. 5 over what equals 10 over 100. If I reduce my percent, 10 over 100, so I divide that by 10, that would be 1/10. Then I take my 1/10, and I want to get from 1/10 to 5 over something. So what do I take 1 times to get to 5? 1 times 5 equals 5. That means I also take my 10 times 5, which equals 10. Oh, sorry. Which equals 50. 10 times 5 is 50. And so I get 50 there. Okay? So either of those 3 ways. Let me do a couple more, or at least one more problem each way, and just show you how you would do that. So 6 is 25% of, and then we don't know. So we started with 6 over, we don't know what it's out of, and it's 25%, so we put our 25 over 100. And if we use the equivalent ratios way, then we say, oh, well, 6 doesn't go into 25. It might take a decimal to go into 25. So actually, let's just use cross multiplication division. So the cross multiplication, I would do my 6 times 100, which is 600. And then I would divide the answer by 25. And that equals 24. So that should be 6 out of 24. Now, if we used simplifying and multiplying, 6, which is kind of the same thing we did with unit rates. So 25 over 100, 25 and 100 can both be divided by 25. And then after I do that, how do I get from 1/4 to 6 over something? Well, I can get from 1 to 6 by multiplying by 6. That means I take 4 times 6 and I get 24. I could have also done equivalent ratios by figuring out how to get from 6 to 25. I decided not to do that because I didn't want you guys to have to mess with a decimal number, because it would just take a little bit more work. Out of all 3 of the methods that I've shown you, the one that I would probably choose is the cross multiplication, because the other methods you may come up with a number that's harder to divide, or one that you have to use a decimal in order to find the answer. So I would probably choose the cross multiplication method if I had to choose one to stick with. Let's just do one more using that method, and then hopefully we'll be on our way. So if I have 12 is 40% of, then I start with 12 over question mark. Actually, I'm going to have to stop this pretty soon. So 40 over 100, multiply, and I get 1200. I'm going to go pretty quick. And then divide that by 40, and I would get 30. So my answer should be 30.